Welcome back to the TelecomTV Summit on Telcos and Public Cloud and our live Q&A show. I'm Guy Daniels, Director of Content, and this is the second of 2 live Q&A shows. It's your final chance to ask questions related to CSPs and the public cloud providers. Now, earlier today we held a panel discussion that looked at the pros and cons of a telco multi-cloud strategy. A highly topical issue, and quite honestly, we could have continued talking for at least another hour. We've already received a lot of questions from you, and all of our panelists are back to help answer them during this live show. If you haven't yet sent in a question, then please do so now and use the Q&A form that's on the website. As always, your co-host for the Q&A show is Ray Maistre, who's editorial director here at TelecomTV. Ray, as well as the panel today, we also heard from Luis Fiallo of China Telecom Americas. And again, the multi-cloud figured prominently. And for one telco at least, it's a key strategic move. But I think we've already discovered that this is a really complex issue.
Not half, Guy. As the panel showed, there are lots of pros and cons for adopting a multi-cloud strategy, and that's why I like this topic. There are many practical and theoretical reasons why using multiple cloud platforms makes a lot of sense for specialist applications, redundancy and so on, but also practical day-to-day operational arguments in favor of working with a single cloud provider. It's not cut and dried, it's a real grey area, which makes it perfect for a panel debate, right? So let's have at it.
Yeah, thanks, Ray. Then the debate we shall have. And judging by the first few audience questions, it's going to be a good one. So, as you say, let's have at it. But first, though, we ought to meet our guests who are going to help with all of your questions. And joining us live on the programme today are Danielle Royston, CEO and founder Telco DR, and also acting CEO of Totogi. Fatih Nar, who is Chief Technologist, Telco Partner Solutions at Red Hat. Beth Cohn, SDN Product Strategies at Verizon. And Ildiko Vansha, who is Director of Community for the Open Infrastructure Foundation. Hello everyone, thanks so much for joining us again. As I said earlier, lots of audience questions to get through today, so to start us off, it's over to you, Ray.
Okay, thanks, Guy. And so the first question for today's speakers is as follows. It sounds like the main issue of multi-cloud is not so much the different providers and technologies, but more about the telco being able to efficiently manage these multiple relationships, whether public or private cloud. Is there an industry standard for this or just best practice guidelines? So where do you find out what the best thing to do is? Beth, can we start with you on this one?
Certainly. So I wish there were some best practice guidelines. I wish there were some standards to work with, and the answer is there is neither. So we find that it's kind of a whole new territory for many of the telcos, which is telcos tend to be fairly conservative. We're running a giant network that people expect to work all the time. So that is something that we are struggling with, I'd say. I mean, it's not just Verizon, obviously, it's other telcos as well. And I know that there's some open source work. Obviously OpenStack has been widely deployed by the telcos, but that's not public cloud. And of course, OpenStack and public cloud is not 100% compatible, as I know we will be discussing later on. So I think the answer is it's still a bit of the Wild West.
Okay, a Wild West. Danielle, is that how you would see it as well?
Wild West, absolutely. And so especially for those telcos that are selecting private clouds, I think I call it the cloud native zoo. The thousands of technical decisions that you need to make in order to build a private cloud makes it very difficult to manage, right? You're going to have, maybe hundreds of vendors to manage as you're building your stack, and it's one of the primary reasons I really like the public cloud, right? You'll be managing one vendor, the public cloud vendor, and getting, the majority of your technology from them. This is why I really favor going public cloud native and not bringing lowest common denominator technology to make sure that you can repatriate or move to another public cloud very easily. Use the technology at your public cloud vendor. It gives you one vendor that you're working with, one console for billing. It's really easy to manage that relationship when you contrast it, especially to a private cloud and all the vendors you'd have to manage. So that's my recommendation. Obviously, go to the public cloud.
Okay. And Ildiko, are there any best practices that you know of?
I don't know about the best practices. However, I have ideas how to get there. First, though, I wanted to reflect on the points that Beth was making about OpenStack. So the thing is that there are over 300 public cloud data centers that are powered by OpenStack around the globe. So I think it's not necessarily that OpenStack and public clouds are not compatible. In fact, there are a lot of public clouds running based on OpenStack around the globe as we speak. It's kind of the step of when those public clouds will be utilized for telecom workloads. On the other hand, there is another open source project. It is called Starling X, which is creating a fusion between Kubernetes and OpenStack. So it kind of also gives you the workload orchestration component, which can also help in terms of bridging the private and public cloud space in terms of trying to get a little bit further away from infrastructure and focusing on the workloads themselves. And when it comes to the industry standards and best practices, the third project that I wanted to mention is called Etiquette. And Etiquette is a project where both telecom operators and vendors are working on trying to figure out the cloud, I believe, on all angles, both from the technology perspective, APIs, interoperability, and I honestly don't see a reason why we couldn't have a conversation about how to actually handle relationships as well. I think that the operators are in their journey towards finding ways to work closer together as opposed to treating it as a competition where I'm absolutely not going to talk to my competitor. The open source space is a space where competitors work together on common issues and challenges. And I think that what the question identifies in terms of handling relationships and operators are kind of forming a united front, that is just the next step in the process.
Okay, thanks, Ildiko. A sharing, caring environment where people can share their experiences. That's what we're looking for right now, because everybody wants to know the best way to move forward on this. Okay, great insights there. Thanks very much. Good start to the show. Guy, over to you for the next audience question.
Yes, thank you, Ray. A slight change of tack with this question. This question is more of a cry for help, really, because the audience member who asked this question says, cloud infrastructure gets changed and modified far too frequently. I can't get the stability that I need for my operations. I just don't have the resources to maintain my workloads on the latest cloud software. Has anyone got a solution? So it's a real cry for help. Someone overworked and overloaded by the sounds of it. Fatih, perhaps we could come to you. Do you recognize this kind of plea?
Yeah, daily. We have this issue daily on our side as well as on our customer side. It's actually not an issue. It is part of the life if you're going with multiple clouds and dealing with the different infrastructures through their API integrations, through their service catalogs. As the question hints, those service catalogs grows, changes, adopts based on the need of the market. And even last week, there was a big change in one of the hyperscalers. It was about the object storage policy change. And that change put two major software as a service provider out of service for a couple of hours. The key thing in here is you have to follow what is getting published by those infrastructure vendors. And by means of, they say, hey, this is going to be the change coming at this particular date and time. you have to follow those notice through emails, through communications, and get ready your infrastructure or your services that is depending on them to adopt those changes when time comes. And this could be really challenging because if you look at the service catalogs of each hyperscaler, it's hundreds of servers out there. Which one are you going to follow? Which one actually you are depending on? So you have to be really wise and cautious to follow those changes. Otherwise, you will find yourself out of service or not being able to serve your customers because of a change that you didn't see coming your way. So best practice will be in this way is follow your communications and implement an abstraction layer to these multiple API integration points within one central API. So one central API that you depend, and that API gateway guards you from the bigger changes that is happening behind the gateway towards the hyperscalers. Well, as I said, even then, it's not 100% bulletproof, but you have to follow the changes and be cautious and be prepared. This is part of the life of the cloud.
Yeah, thanks, Fatih. It certainly sounds like this is like an inevitable part of business here, so you've got to adapt. It looks like you all want to come in on this question, so that's fantastic. So, Ildiko, let me come across to you first.
I think there are multiple angles to this question, and honestly, I don't really think it is a specific multi-cloud question. I think that this challenge is there even if you're going with one cloud platform. When it comes to, for instance, OpenStack, the project has been having 2 releases per year since its inception over 12, 13 years ago soon. And we have continuous debates within the community whether we should have more releases or we should have less. And when it comes to the group who advocates for less releases or less frequent releases, one big group is the telecom operators, because they tend to move slower. Many of the operators are on older releases of the platform, and it's not because the platform doesn't have great features in the new releases. And 2 releases are not that many. Kubernetes, I think, has 3 or 4 per year. It's just the way how they structure their processes and the level of automation that they have in place at this point. So I think that this is definitely a work item on the operator side to figure out how to move faster from release to release. And I think that when we look into public clouds, that doesn't necessarily solve the challenge because the public cloud is changing as well. They are not keeping everything in place as is for the next 10 years when someone is ready to use a new feature. So I think that the advantages of, for instance, looking into the open source space, that you know what's coming. You also have an influence in terms of what and when it is coming. So you can both monitor the new features, the fixes, the changes, the API changes, as well as participating in the community's activities to define the next set of new APIs and new features. So I think that the operators have the opportunity here to leverage the ecosystem and all the knowledge that is available in the public open ecosystem, and we can all work together to help them move faster.
Great, and it sounds, Ildiko, that there's no shortcuts here for our telco viewers, unfortunately. Danielle, let's come across to you first, then we'll go across to Beth. But Danielle, what are your thoughts on this?
Yeah, I think this is one of the dangers that you run into if you are building a cloud agnostic stack where you're having to monitor updates from several, right, dozens and dozens of vendors. And why I strongly advocate to rebuild and refactor applications with public cloud native, like literally services from your cloud provider, and rebuilding that application, right? Now, this totally brings in the issue of vendor lock-in, but if you can get past that, and you've selected your public cloud vendor for a reason, right? Because they're innovating and providing the services you need. Now you have a single source that is producing the updates, and if you're just going to lift and shift your stuff over, and not really refactor for being public cloud native, this is going to be a real challenge. But regardless, running in the public cloud, you have to change your operational practices. You want things to be changing underneath you, getting that innovation and retraining your people to learn how to adopt new features very quickly. This is a different mindset. It's a mindset change for the telcos to be able to do this. And so, at least at AWS and the big cloud vendors, they always announce what's coming. Sometimes they provide a preview release so you can get access to those features. You don't always have to take on those features if you don't want to, and they're backwards compatible. And so I don't know about, the different vendors if you're using things outside of AWS, but it's one of the reasons why my company, Totogi, right, we're always trying to use more and more of AWS because it just makes it simpler for our engineering teams to know what's coming, understand how that impacts our application, and be ready to change. So I keep saying it. I'm like, use more and more of the public cloud. Don't just use it as a data center. Use it for the software stack and really 2 feet in, use all of it.
Thanks, Danielle. So many of these questions and answers are all interrelated as we're finding out. And also vendor lock-in is one of the options in our poll. So we'll have a look at that soon to see what the audience thinks of that. But Beth, let's come across to you first.
So I want to address a little bit of the elephant in the room, which is that I think that the global telecoms that Verizon is have different make different decisions than possibly some of the smaller telcos, and that has to do with the scale and something that we call the balance of trade. So many when Verizon's looking at should we move into the public cloud as opposed to continuing to use our own cloud services, we have to see will it be more cost effective to work with a cloud vendor, or setting aside even multi-cloud vendors, or is it better to stay with our own infrastructure that we support ourselves? And touching on what Ildiko said, we're delivering services where in the past we've invested in equipment that we might be typically using for 10 or more years, and it's a mind shift, it's a cultural shift to think that the underlying infrastructure is not as stable as that we're used to. Our workloads are pretty stable. So we're looking for cloud infrastructures to be stable as well. So there is definitely a push-pull. I can't say that we've solved the problem, but I'm all for cloud, by the way. I'm not saying that we should go against it. However, how much goes into the public cloud, how much goes into our private cloud? Is there a balance? There's a lot of factors that go in to our decision making, and some of it is the stability of being able to, if we are on a private cloud, to say, hey, you know what, we're going to put off the upgrade to the latest version because we can, and it's a working environment. So it's a mixed bag.
Thanks, Beth. Yeah, absolutely right. We fully get that, and we may not have come up with a solution for our audience member there, but we've certainly come up with a lot of ideas and thoughts. I am aware of the time and the need to get more questions in because they are mounting up and coming in even as we speak. So let me hand over to Ray and we can move on to our next audience question.
Okay, thanks, Guy. And just a reminder to vote in the poll because we'll be coming to the latest results, updated results of the poll soon. The next audience question says, the Red Hat speaker mentioned bursting traffic going in and out of the public cloud as traffic demands change. This sounds good, but it also sounds expensive. Is this a model already being used by telcos? So, Fatih, let's come to you on this. Is this something that's already happening, this kind of dipping in and out?
So let me take this question in two parts. From one is the solution, one is the telco part. The solution is briefly mentioning using cloud service providers as a growth area for a certain period or certain time frame, which is we call bursting into cloud, right? And this is not a new paradigm. This has been used long years, especially by online retailers at Christmas time, at special days like Mother's Day, Father's Day, whatever day it is. It is what they are leveraging to handle the incremental traffic that is specific to certain time or date. What's the option? Oh, then you have to do capacity calculation, order the hardware on premise, and then use it. And then you have to either turn it off or keep it running. If it is keeping running, you have to pay the bill. So this is a paradigm that has been proven its value. So now the second part of the question is, can this solution, the bursting to cloud, does it make sense for telco? Yes, it does, because the telcos offer services that is also the traffic is fluctuating. It's not a constant traffic. So could it be expensive? Yes, especially if you are not conscious about what you are growing into and using what services, as well as the tricky part. I think the tricky part here is the network charges, because if you're carrying a traffic between hyperscaler and on-premise, there's a special charging item in your bill, which is network egress charges. I think this question kind of hinting that for telco, because most of the telco services are network-intensive services and applications. Now, let me tell you this. Most of the tier ones and tier twos, the big telcos, have already direct peering and have already special agreements and arrangements between their networks into cloud service providers network. So those network charges is usually when the traffic is leaving cloud service provider network and going into internet. If you have a solution that is in place, that is carrying the traffic between the cloud network and your on-premise network without crossing internet, you won't be ending a lot of big charges on your network egress. There will be still inter-domain or inter-region charges will be appear. But even for that, in the last 2 years, we are seeing special companies come in and offering that, hey, our value to you is to lower your network charges. This is how we do it. We have an overlay networking, say with MPLS, between all cloud vendors and into your on-premise. You will never pay the network charges listed in the price list. So there are various solutions. So TLDR, bursting is a viable, proven solution for handling traffic increase and going down. And network charges, to address network charges, there are solutions in the market.
Thanks there. Beth, let's come to you. Yeah, let's come to you next. Is this something that telcos are something that lots of telcos are doing, adopting this, as well as following in the footsteps of retailers and other enterprises?
It's really very different workloads. So I would say in general, no. We certainly do use both public and private cloud platforms. Typically, our networking type workloads are on a private platform, and we're using the public platform for other types of workloads that are more fluctuating. I have not. I mean, other telcos are doing different things, so I can't speak for everybody. But I think it's something that the companies are still dealing with. As Fatih mentioned, that the retail use case is kind of more obvious because the workloads do tend to spike. We have, our workloads do vary as well, but they vary in different ways. So, for example, we have a typical concentration would be, at the Super Bowl game, let's say. I know that's an American reference, but, or the World Cup where, you have, 40 or 100,000 people in one location, and I can guarantee you they're all using their cell phones. So, you want to have a hotspot type, workload where you can support that level of bandwidth. That's not necessarily something that's going to work with a public cloud. So I think in general, I would say it's a little more complicated to use that burstable model. It's not that we don't have burstable types of traffic. It's just the use cases are different and don't work as well with the public cloud.
Okay, thanks, Beth. And Danielle, you wanted to come in on this as well. Is this something that you're seeing happen in the market right now?
Well, back to Beth and Fatih in terms of the retail example. I had a guest on the Telco in 20 podcast, Nanda Kumar, episode 31, who from Verizon, and I will speak for Verizon for just 2 seconds, right? It was a great example of, they did the iPhone 14 launch using the public cloud and, sort of moved all their website traffic into the public cloud. Finance freaked out the day of because they saw the cloud bills go up. But the team reminded them, we would have had to pre-purchase all of this capacity and set it up in a data center in a private situation. Had we not used the public cloud. And so we're going to have this very bursty traffic for, certainly the first day or two and first week, and then it goes away. And so finance calmed down and they were really excited about that. So that's one thing I'd say about that. If you want to hear a real retail example, there's one on episode 31 of the Telco in 20 podcast. But the second thing that Fatih mentioned was sort of the egress fees of bringing that data back on-prem. And I'm going to just leave it out there that telcos should maybe think about leaving your data in the public cloud, right? There's some really fabulous ways to save on storage, right? They have usually, from cold to cool to warm to super hot data options. There's usually a 4x difference in pricing. And so do you need to move that data all the way back on-prem, or can you just burst in the cloud and leave it there and start to create centralization of your data in the public cloud so you can do analytics on it, machine learning. We're talking about Gen AI now. You're going to need the scale and computing power of the public cloud. And so do you really need to bring the data back on-prem? The end.
I'm sure that's not the end, though. That's
I'm sure I can hear everyone. What?
Okay, all right. Good variety of views there on that, and hopefully that was useful to the person who put the question in. So time is running fast. The police are coming for us now, so I'm going to hand over to Guy for the next part of the program.
Yeah, thank you very much, Ray, because it's now time to check in, as promised, on our audience poll for this Telco and Public Cloud Summit. 1 question, 7 answer options, and as we've said to you, you can pick whichever ones you feel are the most relevant. And the question we have been asking you this week is, what are the main barriers to successful telco and public cloud partnerships? And you can see the real-time votes here, and it looks like finally we've got one of the options has just crept over the 50% mark. So 51% of you say the perceived risk of vendor lock-in is a barrier. Well, as we mentioned that slightly earlier in our program. Otherwise, it's quite widely and broadly spread. Now, if you've yet to vote, then you are running out of time. We're only keeping the polls open until the end of today, and then Ray and I will take a look at the results on TelecomTV. Now, we still have time to squeeze in more questions. Yes, we will. So back to you, Ray.
Okay, thanks. And the poll results suggest quite a few low to medium-sized barriers there still in this area of going with the public cloud. Okay, next question from the audience, and this one is almost fresh in. And the question is, security concerns are already a concern with monoclouds. How is this doubled complexity addressed in a multi-cloud scenario? So this is the security question, crops up very often when we're talking about the use of public cloud. Does anybody want to come in and address this? Fatih, let's start with you.
So this is a good question, but we shall not think about security as a single item for a whole cloud services. Because inside the catalog of the services, each hyperscaler offering, say pick one service, say, the elastic compute or VM infrastructure. Each particular service has a security compliance list as well as security best practices. So you shall think about what services I'm consuming from a hyperscaler. If I'm going to replicate the same consumption with another hyperscaler, you only look at that particular service and the security best practices and the security compliances for the regulations. You don't need to worry about the services that you are not using. However, when you're using, say, one particular service from a hyperscaler cloud service provider, that service actually doesn't offer you the whole consumption or the whole experience. There are supplementary services around it, say identity access management, say object storage, say block storage, which is part of your solution. And each product, there are security best practices, there are security regulations. You have to be conscious about what you're using and what are the best practices. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Fatih. Beth, let's come to you on this. I mean, is this a concern for telcos as they go into a multi-cloud strategy, that the security implications multiply?
Oh, absolutely, totally. And it's not just multi-cloud, just moving into the public cloud. The telcos are used to managing their own security. We're very security conscious. We run a whole lot of private networks to make it all work. And, by moving into the public cloud, we're giving up some control, right? That's always of concern. Having multiple clouds, only, multiplies that exponentially. We are regulated. I know in the U.S. we have concerns about CALIA, for example, and that is a consideration that we need to take into as part of our designs of our systems. We need to make sure that the traffic that's going into that public cloud, we can actually address any CALIA concerns or CALIA inquiries. And the public clouds are, they're not regulated in the same way that we are. So that's absolutely top of mind for us. And also our customer data, right? So that's another issue, which is, we're also regulated about, what we can do with our customer data. We obviously don't look at it, but, it's traveling through our networks. Again, security is of top concern for us. We do as much security as possible, both at our level, within our infrastructure, but also for our customers as well. So we offer many, Verizon has a whole security practice, and we offer a whole bunch of security products that wrap around our network services, including network services that go into the public clouds. We have many customers that have concerns about putting applications into the public clouds, and they want to secure them just as much as we want to secure any of what we put into the public clouds. We regularly get questions from our customers about what our infrastructure looks like and what our security posture is about this infrastructure. So it's easier to do if it's our own clouds. If it's the public cloud, that's harder to do because they don't tend to have as strict security postures as we do.
Okay, thanks, Beth. And Danielle, I got the feeling you might want to come in on this because this is a topic you've talked about many times before as well.
Yeah. So just a small point here, and it ties to what I said in the panel, right? And using the public cloud, right? Like Fatih said, you got to understand all the components that you're using and configuring them for the level of security you want. There's a lot of flexibility in the public cloud to be very, very secure. I think it rivals even your own private data centers. I'm sure Telco is slow to accept this fact, but the security of the public cloud is pretty much unrivaled. But you got to learn how to configure all these different components. And it's one of the reasons why I say, don't start out with a multi-cloud strategy. Start with one primary that you know really well. Get used to moving workloads to different availability zones and understanding how hard that is, and get really good at that before you start adopting another public cloud, because you got to learn the whole stack and how it's different and how to configure it. And it's like almost learning a whole different language and speaking a different language. So start with one, get to know it very, very well, get very, very comfortable with it before you start to expand.
Okay, thanks, Danielle. Going to move quickly now to Guy for the next question, because we are getting close towards the end of the program, but we want to try and get as many questions as we can in. So Guy, over to you.
Yeah, thanks very much, Ray. We've got about 10 minutes of the show left, and I think we can get in a couple of questions if we have, if we now designate these rapid fire rounds. I think that'd be good. Here's the next one that came in slightly earlier. The question is, multi-cloud causes me big problems, especially dealing with the different software and API flavors. It's not as open as many like to think. However, my management has insisted on using multi-cloud because it doesn't want to be reliant upon just one provider. Unfortunately, I think we have to accept that multi-cloud is here to stay. So I'm taking from this question that really there's someone who's not too keen on working into a multi-cloud environment, but it's more than just technical issues at stake here. There's other strategic management issues at play, which will ultimately change a decision. Danielle, let's come over to you first for some quick comments on that one.
Your management is wrong, and convince them not to go multi-cloud. Learn one cloud really well, get everything working, and then expand to another multi-cloud. The end.
And be very polite when you make those overtures as well, because you want to keep your job, hopefully. Well, maybe you don't. Beth, let's come across to you next.
So you hit it on the head. It's really an issue of technical issues around the cost of, supporting multiple clouds. I will not argue with Danielle to say that multiple clouds do cost more, because obviously each one's a little bit different. But, understand that there's business decisions as well. I can tell you that, telcos definitely are, for the most part, working with multiple clouds, no matter what, even if one of them is its own private cloud and then possibly one public cloud. But I should also point out that our customers, our enterprise customers, also work multi-cloud. I would say the vast majority of the customers that I work with are multi-cloud today. So I don't think that's going to go away. And, business considerations, that mention of that vendor lock-in, that was in the poll as, just over 50% of the respondents think that's important. So, they don't call Amazon the Roach Motel for nothing.
Thanks very much, Beth. And we had another telco recently talking about not wanting to keep all their eggs in one basket. So there you go. So Fatih, I'll come to you in a moment, but Ildiko, some quick comments on you here, because I guess it's not just technical issues here, there's business considerations.
I would just say that what I see as a big challenge here is the interoperability issues and the business decisions that kind of drive towards still having vendor lock-in and having those problems. We talked about this topic a little bit before the show, and just kind of understanding the difference between providing an opportunity to configure something different ways versus having the same feature available in different flavors that are not interoperable with the same feature at another cloud. And my question really is that what are we missing here? Is that really just business driven, or is it technology driven as well? Which I believe it shouldn't be the second. Like we also talked about like dependency on network. My personal experience just today, I have a Wi-Fi where I live, and I also have 5G on my phone. The Wi-Fi is really unstable, so sometimes, very often, I switch over to use the 5G on my phone for this show. And my laptop works with both. I don't have to do anything with it. It just works. Why can't we have that for public-private clouds?
Yeah, good point. Good point. Well, absolutely. Thanks very much, Ildiko. And Fatih, let's come across to you for some quick final thoughts on this one before I hand back to Ray.
So the cloud offers a lot of benefits in comparison to what you need to sacrifice from your daily luxurious life. Is obviously each cloud vendor is like a moving car because their services keep improving and changing. This is part of the agile and new growing world. So this is back to the earlier debate. Telcos want to be like internet companies by means of offering new services to market with the lowest time to market, as well as shiny new attractive ideas turning into products. But yet it's a regulation controlled and driven industry at the same time. So you have to have maturity, you have to have resiliency in your services offering, but you want to be creative, you want to be innovative. So the way to justify or complement this innovation part, time to market, addressing the necessary traffic increase, is public cloud vendors. Having a multi-cloud is like, as hinted before, it's kind of, do you do all your grocery shopping from the same particular supermarket? Not necessarily, right? I mean, you may buy some fruits in some particular supermarket and maybe milk and other dairies from another. This is like picking the right services. Say one cloud vendor is so good with data pipelines, MLAI. Another one is so cheap with the computing infrastructure. And yet another one is so good at the software as a services for workplace. So picking the right services for your business from different catalogs is what it is the fact of life. So yes, it is not easy, but you have to keep up with it.
Yeah, well, I think this decision is way above my pay grade, so I will defer across to Ray. Ray, what should we do? I just don't know. Other than, thanks very much, everyone, for those answers, and great answers as well. Let's come across to you, Ray, because we will just about have time for one final question.
Yeah, we're going to squeeze this question in. So we're looking for very quick, rapid-fire answers. And the question is, has anybody found a winning strategy to show telecom companies how to leverage public cloud technologies to benefit their customers? So let me read that again. Has anybody found a winning strategy to show telcos how to leverage public cloud technologies to benefit their customers? So any quick thoughts on this? Okay, so Danielle first and then Fatih. And Beth. Danielle first.
Yeah. I just did an executive interview with you, Ray, about Totogi, which is a public cloud technology, being able to monetize private enterprise networks. So this would connect to a telco's network, selling a private enterprise network that then wants to monetize it for their end customers. Using Beth's example from before, Verizon is connected to NFL stadiums and you have temporarily bursty, congested traffic. The NFL could offer a package to fans in the stadium to have prioritized network experience. So, all of us know what it's like when we're in a congested area. We have compromised network access. Pay $20 extra for the day to be able to access replays. I think there's a lot of people in that stadium that would do that. And so that would benefit the NFL. They'd be able to, or the team, they'd be able to monetize it and get additional revenue.
Okay, thanks, Danielle. Beth, over to you.
There's been lots of areas where we can do that. I know we offer a bunch of various networking products that allow our customers to monetize the public cloud. We're doing a lot of work around IoT type activities where our customers, we're partnering with AWS, with Wavelength, and Microsoft Azure for their edge solutions that allow customers to create IoT type applications. We also have secure cloud interconnect, secure and SDI, which I never secure data interface, that allows customers to access public clouds to privately and securely, which is important to them. So we have quite a few applications that really allow customers to move their applications into the public cloud or create new applications. And I should note that these do in fact support multi-cloud. Both SCI and SDI specifically are designed to cross over multiple cloud providers, and many of our customers are using those products in that manner.
Okay, thank you, Beth. All great examples there from you and Danielle. Fatih, let's end the show with your view on this about winning strategy for telcos, about how they can use public cloud to benefit their customers.
I think the key word here is the consistency of the experience and quality of service. How can you offer a consistent experience to your consumers or your customers while you're moving those applications between different infrastructure types? That's the main question. So in order to do that, obviously you have to have an abstraction layer. Say you have particular, you're using, say, OpenShift on-premise. You're using OpenShift with hyperscalers. So the application can move between on-premise and cloud dynamically, because at the end it's the same platform it's depending on. And then you can tie that services into an automation so you can move or create more instances of those services based on the demand, because you're leveraging automation. So the keyword is consistency and automation.
Okay, Fatih, thanks very much. And at this point, the red light is flashing in the corner of our virtual studio, so I'm going to hand back over to Guy.
Yeah, thanks very much, Ray. Because we are out of time, 45 minutes or a little bit more, I think. Thank you so much to all of our guests who joined us for this live program. Some absolutely fantastic ideas and solutions have come out of this. And to our audience, of course, for sending in all those questions.
Yeah, and that's a wrap for this year's Summit on Telcos and Public Cloud. But Guy and I will be back next month in person for the DSP Leaders World Forum in Windsor, UK.
Yay, go Windsor. I can't wait for that. And of course, we are live streaming the whole event. And our next online summit is in June, when we focus on Open RAN. But in the meantime, please join us for DSP Leaders. It's going to be very special. Goodbye for now.